with everyone growing disenchanted with the corporate duopoly parties, a lot of people are looking for third options. And Nick Brana is here to make the case that the movement for the People's Party is exactly the home disaffected voters have been looking for. Let's talk about it. Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream interview here on Mikasa Sukas. And of course, as always, I'm your humble host, Niko House. Today, I have a very special guest returning, but it's been quite some time since he's returned. Things have changed a little bit since last time you've been on here, Nick. So I'm glad to have Nick Brana back on the show. How are you doing, Mr. People's Party?
Hey man, it's so good to be with you again. Yeah, it's been a little while, and it feels great to be back. I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, self-isolating, but I'm happy to see kind of like the changes that are finally happening in the progressive movement. Really overdue.
I was about to say, I know at the beginning of the election, that was kind of a time where a lot of the Democrats got a chance to benefit from this idea of like there being like this galvanization happening on the left behind Bernie, behind Tulsi, even behind Yang, Marianne Williamson. And some people took advantage of that. But I feel like it's kind of, it's dissipated. That excitement for the Democratic Party and the hopes that were placed, not necessarily in the Democratic establishment, but at least hopes that were placed in these particular candidates to maybe change the Democratic establishment. It's gone now. And now it seems like it's y'all's time, man. Third party time is here. This is game time for you. How do you feel about that?
It's God, it's a long time coming, and it feels good. It feels to me like it took. I do feel like the Democratic Party is like breaking down now, and I feel like it hasn't hit them. Like everywhere I look, the progressive movement is just not buying the lesser of two evils, like bullshit logic anymore. And it's like it feels like it took a rigged American election, another like rigged primary, an economic, yeah, a global pandemic, and an economic meltdown to bring down like one of these corporate parties that has been like dragging us to the right forever, but now it's finally happening.
That's so true, and it's in my opinion, I agree with you. It's been a long time coming, but to be honest with you, just from an objective perspective, and as a voter, it's been interesting to see how you've maneuvered, despite so many people still buying into this idea that the Democratic Party can somehow at least be reformed enough that we can engage in a fair electoral process, but not even that seems possible. And yet, behind the scenes, relatively quiet, if I may add, you've been building up a team and building up infrastructure, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, so to speak, and it's seemingly here. So, Nick, make your pitch to the people. There's a lot of parties out there, man. They got the Socialist Party, Democratic Socialists of America, Working Families, Green Party, Libertarian Party, Independent Party. Why is the Movement for the People's Party any different than these other third parties who are seemingly making the same pitch to third party independent voters?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like looking at the history of how independent parties have succeeded, I mean, we like the platform that we have is very much Bernie's platform, with some additions, for example, like a universal basic income, and public banking and some other things. But it's really like, and the majority of Americans kind of agree with those issues. That's like one of the things, that we confront like as progressives is that like we're all on board with like, Medicare for all and pre-public college and breaking up the big banks, and like all of the rest of the things that Bernie ran on. So things. And now that it's kind of, it's finally become clear that the Democratic Party isn't going to be the vehicle for that. For 4 years, we tried, just about everything to reform the Democratic Party. We came back to square zero, square one here by trying to run inside a presidential election, and that didn't work either. So what we're doing as the Movement for a People's Party is, we're looking at like, how have new parties succeeded across our own history and internationally? And so, in the United States, it's kind of like received establishment wisdom that, you can't have an independent party and that, they're just spoilers. But actually, when you look at the polling now, there has been decades of loss of confidence in both establishment parties and in institutions across the board. And so I mean like the presidency, Congress, public health, the criminal justice system, banking, big business, television news, newspapers, like have all plummeted. And
because they're all basically pitching the same duopoly rhetoric.
Exactly. And they're all basically on the same team. They're like different subsidiaries of the big, massive, like corporate Wall Street, state, this like fused machine. At the same time, you've seen this like massive rise of people calling for a major new party. You've seen a massive rise of independence. There's a majority of Americans now, 57% to 38%, calling for a major new party. Independents are a big plurality at about 42%. Only 27% identify as Republicans. Only 27% identify as Democrats. So like the Republican Party replaced the Whigs, that came about, that split a major party. This is something that separates us, from what I feel others are trying to do and have tried before, is that one of the successful kind of aspects of how you build an independent party is you actually break apart and split one of the major parties in the United States. And that is the Democratic Party now, but part of the trick is that you cannot only draw from the Democratic Party. You have to build like an actual working class alliance, that brings like that invites everybody in essentially, who can agree that, we are being screwed by these Wall Street oligarchs at this point. Like, for example, getting money out of politics, 93% agreement around that. Like, that's the kind of issue you can build a massive like coalition around.
So my thing is, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here because the other parties aren't here to represent themselves. But so that's the same pitch relatively that the Green Party and Libertarian parties have made to us as well. So what is the Movement for the People's Party doing differently to potentially gain a different outcome than they have? Because I mean, they benefited from a huge movement. Both the Libertarian and Green parties did. They set records for themselves in 2016, and unfortunately that wasn't enough to get them over that 5% hump. So what is the Movement for a People's Party doing to ensure that one day, whether it be congressional elections, local elections, or even the presidential election, that y'all can start hitting these thresholds that the Green Party and Libertarian parties have not been able to hit?
Well, the winning model historically and abroad is not necessarily kind of like building up over decades. Unfortunately, parties, that have been around for that long pick up this kind of, impression that that they will always be small parties. And that becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy because people don't, they think, oh, okay, like they come to associate, for example, the Green Party and the Libertarian Party with being small and marginal parties. They also come to associate, for example, the Green Party with, unfortunately, kind of prioritizing exclusively environmental issues above like issues of basic like survival. I can't pay my medical bills. I can't pay, I can't afford a roof over my head. I can't, afford my student debt. And so it's like those are things that a new party, we believe, as the Movement for a People's Party, needs to speak directly to those like concerns that people are feeling, day in and day out with like, with bills.
Well, what do they call the dinner table issues? Is that what they're called?
I think so. The kitchen table issues.
Kitchen table, yeah. So basically, the issues that affect people every day, and hopefully they affect enough people on all the political spectrums that you can kind of build a party that coalesces around those issues rather than around a specific personality and having it be personality driven. Because as what we're seeing happen with the Green Party, the moment that Jill kind of stepped out of the spotlight, the Green Party has suffered since then across the board. It didn't just start in 2020. They were even starting to slip a little bit throughout the midterms and things like that. I don't think they had a really significant win, unfortunately. Now, One of the things that I like talking about when it comes to any type of electoral politics is using some of these built-in advantages against the system, right? Which is ballot initiatives, for example. Now, before we had briefly discussed some of the things that you were doing to get ballot initiatives and those type of things passed in certain states. Have you all found any success doing so thus far?
Well, we're focusing more. Ballot initiatives are a good way to, try to circumvent legislatures and things like that. But we've also seen that legislatures sometimes repeal or attack ballot initiatives, even when they are passed. And so I feel like progressives have tried to find a way around the electoral system and the fact that the two parties are so corporate. And ballot initiatives is one of the ways that we've sought to do that. And there have been really important accomplishments through ballot initiatives, but there's no way around actually having political power in the form of a party in office. And so that's what we're pushing for as MPP. We're not necessarily focusing on ballot initiatives. We're focusing right now on building the movement in this time when the Democratic Party is unraveling. And then immediately after the election, preparing ourselves. We've made a lot of the preparations already to file for ballot access in November, get ballot access ahead of the midterms, and then going into the presidential election, essentially run a candidate there and also run in the midterms.
Y'all are, you want it, man. You want it. That's some good stuff. And I do appreciate how patient you have been in the party in general has been. As a casual observer of third parties, I feel like some people feel like while they're building up their party, they immediately have to run a candidate, despite their party not really being prepared to do that candidate justice when the general election comes. Because whoever your nominee is for a third party, they need more help than any other candidate in the race from their party, right? And it's going to require a uniform effort. And I feel like if you build up the culture of the party first, like you all have seemed to be doing, and then pull a candidate from that culture, then you'll have, in my opinion, a better and overall stronger party because of it. But if you try to base your party's success off of one personality, when that personality is no longer there and those connections are no longer there, then the party seems to overall suffer. So I'm glad that y'all did it the way that you have done it so far. So my next question would be, because I know that there are a lot of people who are thinking about running. Like, I'm sure they had a lot of time to think about it. It's not like they're going out or anything. But they don't want to run in the Democratic Party. What assurances can you give them as far as their viability is concerned? I know that's a question you get often, and I'm sure that you're probably tired of hearing about it, but I feel like it's a fair question because at the end of the day, viability is what stopped all these parties from achieving major gains in the political process. So if people say, hey, I want to run in the midterms, I feel like I like what Nick is saying, but I don't know, man. The Green Party's made some pitches similarly, or the Libertarian Party, if they're a populist right, conservative, they might feel like, well, I've heard this before. So what, kind of, not want to say promises, but what prospects for viability can you offer people who are thinking about running an MPP?
Yeah. And that's something that the party is really going to have to evaluate, itself. Like, I can't give necessarily an answer right now because it's a function of what kinds of resources do we have? Where are the districts where it's smartest to run in? Where can we get some wins? Because getting those early wins, is more important than the scattershot approach of run everywhere, lose everywhere. It's like,
oh, you mean the Justice Democrat approach? Got you. Okay. My bad. I forgot we were still on camera, y'all. I apologize. But no, I like that. I like that. I like targeted runs.
Because the wins, the wins propel you to other things like higher office, like a presidential run, some wins, for example, in the midterms. Also, if some members of Congress, there's members of the squad who they should switch their affiliation. And I believe that as we pick up momentum, I believe they will. And and I think that's a bold prediction. But I believe that when they see the side, what side the movement is on, the way that things are going, the way that there's a real kind of grassroots bubbling right now about this. I think that we'll get some members of Congress that will switch and will also help give it identification immediately. And if enough of us in the grassroots lead them in that direction, then we can especially accomplish that.
Okay, cool, man. So we're gonna get into some drama. Just kidding. Well, I mean, it kind of is drama. But now I want you to contrast the Movement for the People's Party. Say one thing that you like have seen a clear problem with in either the Green Party, Libertarian Party, or both of them, that you can tell the people they will absolutely not have to deal with the Movement for a People Party.
Yeah. And so I feel like in the Green Party, one of the issues that I feel like a lot of like the Green Party has kind of been succumbed to, and there are there's other groups that also unfortunately like succumb to it. I think that in order to be a mass party in the United States, you need to kind of reject the labels. And so that means things, unfortunately, like socialist. It means things even like progressive necessarily, because there's so much, and it doesn't mean that you don't hold those policies. But this is, Bernie did a very good job of showing that this is a winning model. He showed that if you run on the issues, and the issues are all progressive, but you're essentially pitching them in a way that is operating largely outside of labels that have been used to divide people and have so much kind of like divisive potential at this point. So I think that's one of the keys to success in the United States. It's like focus on the issues rather than trying to persuade people like to change their preconception of a label that the establishment has propagandized for like decades.
I like that because a lot of the so we saw a lot of this in 2020 where people were able to use these labels that have now become loaded to the point where you don't even know what the hell they mean anymore, to either excuse somebody, attack somebody, dismiss their policy. I think we see the conservatives, at least the Republican conservatives, do this often when it comes to Bernie's policies, right? They say Medicare for all is not good. Why? Because he's a damn socialist. It's like, hold on, but why is the policy bad? Because socialism is bad. Didn't you hear me? He's a socialist. Or we saw people wrongfully, in my opinion, characterize Andrew Yang as a libertarian. I'm like, no, he's definitely a liberal. Like and which is not necessarily a compliment, by the way, but he's definitely a liberal, not a libertarian. But the progressives knew that you could completely separate him and denigrate his brand in the movement if you call him a libertarian, right? People will be less likely to try and affiliate him and branch off from whatever support you had in switching over to Yang. So I agree, man. I think that we really have to start being more issue focused, and we do have to. Whoever runs, especially, is going to have to drop the labels and say, look, I'm not here to talk about, pretty words and descriptions when I could call myself whatever I want to, but let's just look at the results of these policies and the people, the amount of people who support them. So I have a question for you, man.
And like, I would put up, like, there's two like great examples of that. There's there's more than two, but I can give two like right now. The first is the Bernie campaign. I feel like even though Bernie, did call himself a socialist when asked, for the better part of the campaign, he was just talking about in 2016 and in 2020 the issues. He was just driving the issue. Every interview, driving the issues. And then I also feel like the show Rising is like emblematic of the success here too, of like also the rejection of the labels and the coming together around the policies. So it's like there's a successful model there. They've been gaining, I don't know, several thousand like subscribers a day. It's pretty insane.
They're going to end up passing TYT. They're going to end up passing them. And I don't even necessarily agree with them all the time. I disagree with Sagar on various like random social issues. But like, I know that really he's like on the losing side of that argument. It's going to happen anyway. So I don't really pay much attention to it. That's my boy. And in Crystal, I used to have a little bit of an issue to how she could capitulated on certain foreign policy issues and things like that. And I do believe that she had fell victim to glorifying Bernie too much, to the point where the staff had clearly stopped covering other important topics if it wasn't bolstering Bernie. And that was problematic for a lot of reasons, because then you didn't get to hear about the Securing America's Elections Act. You didn't get, which we so desperately needed. You didn't get to hear about moving for a People's Party during the primary at its height. You only got to hear about it after, when things started simmering down. And so even when I disagree with them, I do know this: they figured out something that I feel like you figured out in 2016, and I figured out doing this. Man, telling 50 to 60% of the truth in politics is like a gold mine, because nobody else will do it. And I feel like that's something that we can play on if we just tell the truth. These labels are just labels. They're used to either gaslight or deceive or misdirect. Focus on what they're saying regarding policies.
And like the ultimate evidence is when you ask people like to self-identify in the United States as like liberal or centrist or conservative, people say this country is like still like a center country, or even like a center right country. When you just ask people to put themselves on a political spectrum, they're like, what are you? What would you consider yourself? And so, but then those same people who are saying, I'm a conservative, I'm center, I'm center right, are like, okay, well, now, do you support Medicare for all? It's like, oh, hell yeah. Do you support free public college? Hell yeah. And so you can go down the issues like that. And it's like, that's why you get Fox audiences who are like, do you like your employer healthcare? No, let's trade that.
Yeah, that's true. I know, right? And they were kind of like, shit, we was not expecting this. We should have asked them before the town hall started, because now it looks silly, goddamn.
Right.
So I have a question for you, man. There's been some new information to come out about not only Jeff Weaver, but Chuck Rocha, regarding a super PAC that they started specifically to help Joe Biden, and what seemingly is on behalf of Bernie Sanders. Now, I've expressed issues with Jeff Weaver. Old staff members from 2016 have expressed issues with Jeff Weaver. In private, you've expressed issues with Jeff Weaver. Some senior members of this 2020 staff had expressed issues with Jeff Weaver and other interactions and engagements. Now, I know that we discussed some stuff in private, but you've made your feelings very public this morning on Twitter. So can you enlighten people about, why you feel the way you do about Jeff Weaver, on the crux of this, all this new information coming out, where he's basically acting antithetical to what you thought Bernie's movement was about?
Yeah, I decided that it was really time to share some things that, that I had not from my time at Our Revolution and on the Bernie campaign, in light of Jeff essentially peddling Biden now, and doing so in the immediate wake of the new evidence that has come out about Tara Reade, that has, essentially validated, her claims of rape against Joe Biden. And so I find it pretty unconscionable that Jeff Weaver is now picking this time of any time, to start a super PAC in support of Biden. I think that, the guy is a lifelong right-winger. He's been on the wrong side of every issue. Now he literally cannot make it through an interview without forgetting what he's talking about.
Or staying awake.
Oh, exactly. Or he can't even control his facial expressions anymore. He's kind of, his mouth is hanging open. And now he has, this really credible rape charge, and so Jeff Weaver, unfortunately, the nature of Bernie's relationship with him has been very problematic in the two presidential runs that he made, and at Our Revolution. He's always been an establishment Democratic force who's been pushing Bernie to, essentially give in to Hillary Clinton and endorse her, and not settle for not getting very much from her. Pushing Our Revolution.
He pushed that early too, way earlier than what people thought. Before the convention, he started pushing him to concede to Hillary.
Absolutely. I mean, he helped negotiate a non-aggression pact with the Clinton campaign in May of 2016. And there are signs that did in fact the same thing with Biden this time around.
Yes,
And
before he even
also, I mean,
conceded, Bernie said himself that weeks before they had already established a task force together, which means that essentially you have effectively conceded, but you didn't tell anybody. So, yeah,
right.
it's frustrating.
I mean,
Go ahead.
also running a campaign. I mean, like, uh, y- this you can't put everything obviously on Weaver's shoulders because the ultimate responsibility comes down to Bernie. And
Mm-hmm.
Bernie's responsible for empowering the people around him. He's responsible for the people that he listens to. Like on his campaign, he clearly should have been attacking Biden a lot more, before March. That was a really bad decision. He should have been drawing sharper contrast with Biden instead of saying that Biden's his friend, Biden's not corrupt, Biden could win. Because essentially with all of that, he's saying he's obviating the reason for him to run. He's saying there's no purpose
Yeah.
for you to run here.
Yeah, because he's making an argument that as long as Biden is better than Trump, or at least as long as he can be pitched as being better than Trump, then there's no point for you to be here. We can just settle for Biden if
Right.
beating Trump is the most important thing, which you and I both don't agree, or both agree, excuse me, that it's not beating Trump that's the most important thing. It's changing this system. That's the most important thing, and making sure that we never have another Trump again. So,
Exactly. And numerous staff members or surrogates are coming out and saying that Biden would. I mean that Weaver was the one who was the number one guy who pushed Bernie out of the race early this time around. And
they're
it
looking for jobs, bro. It was obvious. It was obvious from the beginning. I tell everybody who's been working in politics, who's worked in politics, knows what this looks like. They even were leaking to the media so that because they were signaling to the establishment, hey, we're trying to get him to leave or to get him to drop out of the race. So please don't punish us when we come looking for a job on your campaign or come looking for donations to our super PAC.
exactly. And so I mean, he like Bernie having left. I mean, he would have been a lot better, obviously, staying off in the race. He says he wants delegates. He says he wants leverage in the coronavirus, bill negotiations to push progressive priorities. His emergency relief bill or package. He says that he wants to achieve platform changes, and rules changes. I don't think those are particularly meaningful. But still, the best way to do all of that is to keep your biggest platform, which is to stay in the presidential race because
Mm-hmm.
that's how you have leverage. And so giving that up was a really bad decision. And of course, Jeff usually lurks behind
What
all of Bernie's worst decisions.
And what I can't stand is this inability, or at least an unwillingness to substantively make his point, make his case for himself. Because the truth be told, he has no problem with erasing other outsider candidates. But then when it's time for him to make the case for himself, they set him up with these softball questions, and then he just capitulates. Well, yeah, Joe Biden can beat him. No, 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 no. And you don't even have to attack Joe Biden. That's what kills me about it. Like, you can be just straight up, look, man, I don't have to say whether or not Joe Biden is guilty or not guilty regarding this Tara Reade allegation. But what I can say is Trump is going to presume guilt. Do you think Biden can overcome that? I'm not saying whether or not Joe Biden does or does not have dementia or is declining mentally. But what I can say is that Trump is going to assume he is in mental decline and will use that against him. Can Joe Biden stand that? Basically, even if all the things are untrue, perceptually speaking, can Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, overcome how Trump will assume truth and attack Joe Biden, the party, in every way for trying to prop up such a bad candidate? Can he survive that? Answer is no. And you don't have to attack Joe Biden at all for that.
There's no question about it. And if Bernie had actually been attacking Joe Biden from the beginning, that would have been a lot more evident. And it would have done essentially, the Democratic Party and Bernie and the movement a service to expose Biden in that way.
100% agree. I got a super chat question for you. Thank you very much, T Rating Thunderbolt. He said, question for Nick. How effective would a surge in the People's Party support be on tackling against corrupt politics that are in place?
Very
So,
much.
I'm guessing he means this. I mean, yeah, I say it would be. I mean, it's a kind of a self-evident question.
Well, if you're asking if a surge in People's Party would be great, absolutely, because you know what it would do right now if that happened, if if it became very clear that, for example, a large portion of the progressive movement and Bernie supporters and Bernie staff and delegates and surrogates were all and the independent media, like, were all started visibly leaving and all started visibly talking about an independent party, even in a coordinated way. Like, guess what would give the progressive movement more, like, the most leverage, basically? It's like, that's what it would be. There's nothing that would give the progressive movement more leverage over the Democratic Party, and much more importantly, over the coronavirus, like, fourth generation stimulus bill, essentially, because what's happening in this country now is absolutely a disgrace. I mean, with bread lines forming that are several blocks long, a third of people not able to pay rent. But if a large portion, or if the progressive movement in unison says we are out, or that this is a red line, this is the last chance, either you pass, you pass Bernie's package for coronavirus relief, you pass Medicare for all, you pass the
well, not Bernie's package. Bernie hasn't actually introduced anything, so
that's right. That's right.
Rashida Tlaib has introduced some great legislation. Tulsi did, Ro Khanna did, but yeah, we're still waiting.
Rashida has,
listen, I don't know what the hell. Like, Bernie's in a situation where you can literally introduce UBI, and the Republicans have already said, even if only to try to appear more left than Biden, they've already said they support it. Biden or Trump has already said so. Just go introduce it. That's all you gotta do. Introduce it in the Senate. You got all the power. You got this.
I know.
Don't get me started, man.
That's something that, like, it's something terrifying that's going on now, Niko, is that, like, the Republican Party is actually getting to the left of the Democrats on, like, issue after issue. Like, you just brought it up, UBI. It was the Democrats who insisted on means testing it. Yeah.
Bro, this most recent bill, they pulled a bait and switch on them. It was, like, legitimately, so AOC clearly doesn't read the legislation. Matt Stoller said that Bernie doesn't read legislation either, which I kind of believe. I don't even think he reads his own legislation sometimes. And with this last stimulus package, the Republicans tried to fast track it through. Do you know why? Because it actually did what the hell it was supposed to do. And so Nancy Pelosi blocks it initially because they were, in her words, pulling a political stunt. Not because it was a bunch of corporate bailouts, not because they were screwing over the people this time, but because they were pulling a political stunt by doing the right thing. And the Democrats can't stand it. So they just try to block it the first time. That's where we're at now, where we can't even look past these labels and the egos of these leaders of these respective parties, where we can't, like, where you can't even tell when you're getting played. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. And it's like, look, Trump is the one who's expanded Medicare to COVID patients, Meanwhile, Biden is saying he's going to veto it, And then Trump is the one who suspended student loan payments for 6 months. He suspended evictions or foreclosures, So it's like on on trade, Trump is still, more to the left, opposed to than Biden. So it's like, you actually have the Republican Party that is, like, the only one that is kind of, it's out lefting the Democrats. And this is how the Democrats lost. It's because Trump ran to the left of Hillary Clinton, and they're letting it happen again.
And it's funny because it's almost like the Republican Party has become the controlled opposition, right? Because what they've been doing is, at least Trump himself has been trying to do, is, like, give the left a little bit more than what they've gotten. And truth be told, it's actually more than what they've gotten from the Democratic Party. And so he's, like, hedging his bet. He's like, hell, I don't even got to give them everything. If I give them a little bit here, a little bit there, it's more than what the Democrats are offering. And it's working. I don't give a damn what anybody, like, if somebody has created this illusion that Trump isn't as popular as he actually is. Listen, I lived in purple states basically my whole life except for New York. And I know these purple states, y'all, these people like Trump. They like him. They may not agree with him all the time, but most of the time what I hear is, well, he's not a Democrat and I can't stand the Democrats. I'm like, oh, are you a conservative? No. They're not. They just don't like Democrats. That's where we're at.
And they
So
still think that he's sticking it to the establishment.
yeah, and he
They
does
still,
sometimes, but not enough. Not anywhere near
exactly.
enough.
He still picks fights with the media, for example, and they take that to me, and they hate the media. The media is
Yep.
like one of the most disliked institutions in this country, because
Absolutely.
it's like elite, rich people just like talking down and not talking about your issues whatsoever and telling you, what you have to do and voter shaming you and all of this.
Yep. So we got two more super chats, and then we'll let you get up out of here. So, Katie, thank you very much for the super chat. You said if Jesse Ventura clinches the Green Party nomination, will y'all be voting for him? Yes. Even though I have some reservations about his tactics of achieving the nomination, I'm not gonna lie. I just don't feel like dealing with another old white man telling me what's best for me this election. I'm sorry, y'all. I know it's not like me, but goddamn, another one. Like another one. How do you feel, Nick?
I think Jesse Ventura is one of those people that helps kind of like he's hard to classify, and that's good,
Yeah.
because he has appeal from everywhere, kind of like I feel Tulsi does or did, and so I think it's a good development. I hope it happens, but I think that we're going to need a major new party, coming out of this election that is orders of magnitude bigger than what the Green Party is right now. I think it's important to kind of put into perspective, for example, that the Green Party, and I'm really grateful that they've helped kind of like lay the groundwork and make possible actually a breakthrough party at this point, something that can be a lot larger. But they do operate on a budget of like $300,000 to $400,000, and only have like a very few staff, especially between elections and off of campaigns, as much as like one or two. And
Yeah.
so I do think that we need something that is a lot bigger than that. And, if the progressive movement can come together and essentially build something a lot bigger than that, and something that has appeal to all working people, then it will be of that magnitude. And it will also have the sense of kind of possibility that people don't associate with the Green Party, even though that might not be fair.
Yeah, and I don't, and let me be real. There's a reason that Jesse Ventura probably hadn't ran the Green Party or announced that he was even thinking about it until very recently. And I think it's because he saw an opening where you could have some type of infrastructure where he can legitimately have a chance to make some waves. But on the other side of that coin, there's a reason he hasn't been involved in party operations either. And it seems like to a certain degree, Jill Stein's even stepped away. I just find the way that the Green Party has handled their primary thus far very troubling, and I'm just being objective here. And I've also found the way that they've almost become complicit in losing very troubling. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, they're already acting as if Howie Hawkins is the nominee when he hasn't even come close to beating his counterpart, who's Dario Hunter, and yet Howie Hawkins, is clearly the worst candidate. Like, he's not a good candidate. To Bernie Sanders, he's almost damn near to the right of him on foreign policy when it comes to some issues. So, like, you can't put that forward and build what Jill Stein started or continue what Jill Stein started in 2016. And so I agree with you that there has to be a winning culture. Like in any sport, and politics is a sport, despite what people may have you believe, it is a sport. But in any sport, your team has to build a winning culture, even when they, before they get that Michael Jordan, before they get that Kobe Bryant, that Magic Johnson, before they get, before they get their Steph Curry or their Steve Kerr to coach them. You gotta build a winning culture that a star wants to walk into, to carry you to that promised land. And I feel like the Green Party right now is not doing a good enough job of building that winning culture. And as a person who used to be a surrogate for Jill Stein, who really, really liked the Green Party. And so I want to see better improvements for the Green Party, because I feel like they just did not made a strong enough case for people to go into their party at this point. Ben Riley, last super chat. Y'all better start a guerrilla marketing campaign ASAP. Get some internet and mainstream celebrities too. I feel like you've been doing a lot of rounds lately, right?
On the independent media, yeah. That is
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. And I feel like there are a lot of major Bernie supporters, speaking of that, people who are on his campaign, who are really prominent, who are ready for this.
Good stuff. I
So,
liked it. I like it.
yeah.
Well, I'm ready for it too, man. I'm ready to see a change. I'm done with the Democratic Party. I think this is it. At a certain point, I feel like Bernie and the Democratic Party made your case for the party, like for the Move for the People's Party, better than you could have. Because when literally history is completely dismantled as a person who is literally broke all the fundraising records, broke volunteer registration records, broke phone banking records, broke door knocking records, broke crowd turnout records, all kinds of outpolled people, outspent people in certain areas, and yet we're still supposed to be convinced that the alleged rapist who is literally falling asleep during interviews somehow just galvanized the people without campaigning.
And
like
think
that's
of all those resources,
Yeah.
almost $500 million raised between the two different races. I mean, the level of like infrastructure that could be built with a fraction of that, for a new party that wouldn't go away the minute you get cheated out of the election. Like that's something valuable that stays. It's something you build on. It's a party that, actually like fights with our like progressive movements rather than fighting against them.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Nick, I appreciate you for coming on the show, and I appreciate what you guys are doing over at the Moving Forward People's Party. Tell people where they can find you at.
Yeah, come and join us. It is peoplesparty.org. Please, sign up and then sign up to volunteer too. We've got a Slack team running with more than about 350 people now. And so come and join the team, and you can join a working group, and you can plug in however you want. And also sign we wrote an open letter to the DNC, basically declaring our independence from the corporate parties. And you should definitely sign that at demexit.us.
Good stuff. I love it. All right, so demexit.us and peoplesparty.org. And you can follow Nick Brana at Nick, NICK_BRANA. And thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. And always remember, more than anything else, people, find your balance. Peace. If you like that segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa, don't forget to like the video and smash that subscribe button. Want access to members only live streams, behind the scenes footage, and other premium content? Well, you can endorse us on Rockman Premium, become a patron through Patreon, or you can sign up for the MCSC Premium membership through YouTube. All the links are in the description below. But hey, more than anything else, always remember,
Find your balance.
Find your balance.
Find your balance.
Find your balance. Find your balance.
Find your balance. Find your balance.
Always remember, more than anything else, find your balance.
peace.